So, what does expansion and contraction really look like in our bodies, right? And within our mental and physical health is kind of what I am going to be chatting about, especially with the inner critic and stuff like that, because we tend to want to move toward, especially those of us who are neurodivergent, we tend to follow the dopamine, right? And so we're always looking for some way to really continue moving forward and in finding enjoyable things, right? But contraction looks like we're in overwhelm, we are not enjoying anything, but contraction is a healthy thing. And it can also, any of these heartaches and stuff that we experience can help us want to make a change, right? So let's first look at what the natural contraction and expansion looks like that we may not even know is happening in our bodies on a daily basis, right? So imagine your muscles, especially like your diaphragm. It is expanding and contracting without us even thinking about it. It's part of the sympathetic nervous system, and it is keeping us alive. Let's be honest. And the same thing with our heart. It's expanding and contracting constantly, pumping the life-giving blood through our veins, right? And the oxygen through the diaphragm is expanding and contracting our lungs like bellows so that we are getting the life force energy, that oxygen pumping through us and flowing into um our blood vessels and stuff like that. Obviously, I am not that great at anatomy and stuff like that, and I will never pretend to be a doctor. Let's just get that straight right now. But I do find the body itself and the brain to be very fascinating, right? Um, but please, if I ever say anything that's a little off and you know better answers, drop them in the comments because I like to learn as much as I like to teach. And I often learn more from my students. So if you have any information on that, definitely talk about it. In the comments, send me a message, whatever. I don't care. But so as we are experiencing these contractions and expansion in our bodies, that's just one little small piece, right? That's the stuff that's just happening without us even thinking about it. But we also, in order to walk and to lift things, to open our hands, we are expanding and contracting various muscle groups in our body, right? So to be able to do that, that's also a form of expansion and contraction. So, what I like to ask people to start getting in tune with is checking in with your body and, what are the physical responses to being in overwhelm, to n- not being confident in our bodies. What are you feeling? Are you feeling, a lot of times if we're having inner critic problems or something like that, we contract physically and our posture becomes all slumped and we're not proud. Here we are entering Leo season, right? All the peacocks are going to be out and about. But, our posture can say a lot about how we are showing up for ourselves and within the way we show up in the world, right? So that's something I want you to check into. Listen to your body. If you're having certain aches and pains, where are you holding that tension? Is it in your root chakra area, like your hips, your back, your intestines? Or are you feeling more complaints around like your shoulder area, your heart? Maybe you're having contractions at your heart or in your lungs that are um, feel like pinches or stabbing pain, that is a contraction. And a lot of times that pops up when we are having high levels of anxiety in our body. It can pop in when we aren't practicing self-care enough. It could just be hydration issues. So that's why I want everybody to take a little bit of time and sort of do a body check-in, check and scan all the way from your crown of your head, all the way down to your toes, through your extremities. Where are you holding tension and pain, right? Because that means you are in contraction somewhere. Otherwise, you know, I posted a podcast earlier from The Sounds True, talking about reverse meditation. And he was talking about more of this sense of contraction and expansion within pain, and even within like our emotional reaction, how reactive we are in certain cases. So I've really, I've experienced that a lot in my life. And something just sort of like really stuck and made me want to start talking about it more in this sense, because when we are dealing with the inner critic, it's very similar to stubbing our toe. We not might not immediately say ouch. We may not um have the kind of reactive experience, but our body, when our inner critic forms, we're typically very young, and it's when a peer or an influencer, like a parent or a teacher, has a negative response to what we are doing, how we're showing up. Maybe we colored grass purple, and it, in their mind, it can only be green. um the world is such a vast, expanse, and there's so much that we don't know about it. And by telling children that the way that they view the world is wrong, like the grass to them is purple, or at least in that moment, or the sun isn't a rainbow or something like that, then that starts making them, okay, if I do this way, that's where people pleasing starts, right? Because we're contracting, we're, in a sense, fitting into a box, which is not easy for a lot of us, especially on the neurospicy scale. We don't like boxes. We don't like being forced to focus. I hate that word focus, and I'm sure y'all hear a lot more about that. But there's different ways of setting intent and having organization without having to diminish how you show up in life, right? And that's something that I really want to promote and share with people, because I've felt it. That's a pain point for me that I've experienced multiple times, is people trying to force me into the shape that they want me to be in, and it doesn't really work. And your body feels that as you're starting to try to change and like plan ahead to the point where you're ahead of the other person's needs, but you're invalidating your own, right? So within that contraction, if you start feeling your inner critic pop in, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, because of X, Y, and Z, does that feel true to you? Or is it true because someone else made you feel that? So when you're experiencing that, catch that moment and find, is that contraction coming from an internal source? Like, is this an actual intuition thing where we need to pay attention and, okay, this is a survival mechanism. Is this truly going to be dangerous for me? Or is this just me jumping into people pleasing and trying to anticipate someone else's needs rather than what I want to feel? in this moment of joy and pure, like creative force that's flowing out of me, right? So I want to invite you within your daily practice to sort of acknowledge that as you go throughout your day, and even keep some of your daily rituals in mind to add a little bit more magic, a little bit more mindfulness to your day. Maybe it's imbuing your coffee with intention in the morning. Maybe it's um, putting a little bit of extra love into the way you cut your carrots or your onions for dinner at night to nourish you and your family. Um, Maybe it's, instead of like rushing from your car to your next destination, like rushing into the doctor, rushing into the grocery store, take a few moments and actually breathe in and observe your surroundings. And maybe you'll find something special, a bluebird's nest, or there's a rabbit outside, or maybe there's a bird you haven't identified before flying above. So there's always moments for little bits of mindfulness, and it could even just be how you're feeling in your body at the moment. Like, ooh, I stepped down wrong and my ankle hurts, or I hit my ankle when I got into the car. Maybe I need to adjust my seat so that I avoid that in the future, or something like that. Just, add a little bit more mindfulness. It's a practice. You're never going to get to this elevated level of, okay, I'm always going to be this mindful person. There's ways to make it better and it becomes more natural. But if you are neurospicy, you've probably noticed that you have object impermanence issues. And that's something that I deal with on a daily basis with relationships. Out of sight, out of mind. I love my people, but I tend to get so like, I can only put one step in front of the other, and stuff like that, that a lot of times I forget to check in on those that are closest to me. Same thing happens with my yoga practice, my mindfulness practice, even certain art making techniques that I love. If I'm not regularly doing them or making an effort to do them, then a lot of times they start becoming things of the past. And I have recently been talking a lot about water water the plants you want, basically, in your life. What we put energy into is what shows up and is most permanent or most present in our life, right? So just, you know, take a moment to see if you need to readjust anything, right? Um, and within that, your mind and body awareness will start to cultivate, and you'll start to have a deeper sense of what you need for yourself. A nice mindfulness practice that I like to do that taps into sort of self-expression, but is really for anybody, is just taking a pencil and or a pen and a piece of paper, just closing your eyes, taking some deep breaths, and then just gently start drawing your breath. And that can reveal where we're feeling tension, even in our breathing state. Just this very gentle box breath. And notice where you might have like little hitches, or oh, there I start a thought came into mind. There might be a jagged line or something like that. When you have those come into that space, observe those thoughts. And then, is it valid for me to be feeling that? Is there something that I need to be paying attention to in this moment? Or do I need to release it? Right. So those are a couple of things for you to think of this week. And, we're coming up very quickly on the super full moon, August 1st. And that is a perfect time to celebrate not only what we've experienced the past month, the past quarter, the past 6 months, but also just to celebrate ourselves And then it's also a time of releasing all of those things that have been causing you pain or are no longer serving you. This is a great time to do some releasing practices, whether it's journaling, whether it's writing a letter and burning it, whether it's just going and taking a nice long shower, right? So I encourage you to let me know in the comments how you're feeling, what's going on with you, what you're planning on releasing maybe this coming into this next month and stuff like that. Um, and if you are experiencing a lot of contraction and or expansion in your life, I'd love to hear about it. So let me know in the comments and have an awesome week.